Did you know that in the deep waters of the Chesapeake Bay, people have reported seeing massive shadows that match no known creature? Or that in Maryland's oldest forests, strange nighttime voices echo with no visible source? And that underground, there are tunnels so ancient they may predate the earliest recorded tribes. Maryland isn't just the state of the Chesapeake Bay, it's a land of hidden enigmas, living legends, and phenomena science still struggles to explain. So get ready, because you're about to discover 50 incredible facts about Maryland that even many locals wouldn't dare believe. 50. The longest stretch of shoreline is not the ocean coast. The Chesapeake Bay and its multitude of tidal rivers give Maryland an astounding 4,431 miles of tidal shoreline, a number that seems utterly unbelievable given the state's modest size. This figure is calculated by including all the tiny inlets, riverbanks, and island coasts that are subject to the tide's influence, and it completely dwarfs the mere 31 miles of Atlantic Ocean coastline at Ocean City. To put that 4,431 miles in perspective, it is a distance longer than the entire Atlantic coastline of the continental United States, which runs from Maine all the way down to Florida. It means that while Maryland might seem small, the intricate water-laced boundary of the Chesapeake Bay essentially multiplies its habitable or accessible edge by a truly enormous factor. 49. The state's true lowest point is submerged. While the lowest point in Maryland is commonly cited as sea level at the Atlantic Ocean, which is technically 0 feet in elevation, the absolute lowest physical point is actually a depression deep within the Chesapeake Bay known as Bloody Point Hole. This underwater feature plunges to approximately 174 feet below sea level, a depth that makes the water here darker and colder than the bay's average of just 21 feet. It is located near the southern tip of Kent Island in Queen Anne's County, and this geological anomaly is a result of the original Susquehanna River channel that carved out the bay thousands of years ago, before the area was flooded by rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age. 48. Maryland has no natural lakes, only impoundments. Here's a fact that surprises almost everyone. Maryland is one of a handful of states in the US that contains 0 truly natural glacially formed lakes of any significant size. Any body of water that looks like a lake on a map, such as Deep Creek Lake in Garrett County, which is the state's largest, is actually a man-made reservoir or impoundment. A Deep Creek Lake, for instance, was created in the 1920s by damming Deep Creek, a tributary of the Yashiagani River. This absence of natural lakes is a direct consequence of the geological history of the region, which was not extensively scoured by the massive glaciers that created the abundant natural lakes found across the northern United States. 47. The Potomac River forms the southern and western border. Kind of. The entire southern and western border with Virginia and West Virginia is delineated by the Potomac River, but here's the kicker. The border itself is not in the middle of the river, but almost entirely on the Virginia and West Virginia side. Based on colonial-era charters, Maryland generally owns the riverbed and all the water up to the low water mark on the opposite shore. This means that if you're standing in a boat in the middle of the Potomac, you are geographically in Maryland, which has some unusual implications for water jurisdiction, fishing rights, and even property disputes that have occasionally popped up over the centuries. 46. Maryland contains 5 distinct physiographic provinces. Maryland is famously nicknamed America in miniature because of its dramatic range of landscapes, and this is confirmed by the fact that the state contains 5 major physiographic provinces squeezed into its small area. These regions are the Atlantic Coastal Plain, the Eastern Shore in southern Maryland, the Piedmont Plateau, rolling hills around Baltimore, D.C., the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Ridge and Valley Province, and the Appalachian Plateau, far western Maryland. Traveling from Ocean City to Hoy Crest, you effectively cross a microcosm of the entire eastern seaboard's topography, from sandy beaches to true mountain wilderness, demonstrating an incredible density of geographical variety. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe and uncover the hidden stories and curiosities of each USE state that no one else will tell you. 45. The state's narrowest point is less than 2 miles wide. You can almost throw a baseball across the entire state at its narrowest point, which is located in the Hancock area of Washington County. At this incredibly tight squeeze, the distance from the Pennsylvania border in the north to the West Virginia border along the Potomac River in the south is less than 1.6 miles. This geographical pinch point is part of the Appalachian Mountain region and is the reason the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal National Historical Park, which parallels the Potomac and Interstate 68 running east-west, are crammed so closely together, making for a very distinct driving experience. 44. The Chesapeake Bay impact crater influences the groundwater. Millions of years ago, a massive bolide, likely an asteroid or comet, slammed into the Earth, creating the Chesapeake Bay impact crater, which is one of the largest and best preserved impact craters on Earth. While the crater is mostly centered near Cape Charles in Virginia, the northern rim extends up into southern Maryland, where it has a profound and permanent impact on the region's geology and, crucially, on its groundwater systems. The collapsed and fractured rock layers around the rim create complex aquifers, which sometimes yield water that is far too salty or mineralized for human consumption, a lasting buried signature of a colossal cosmic event. 43. Ocean City is built on a barrier island that is constantly shifting. The famed resort town of Ocean City sits on a long, thin strip of sand known as a barrier island, and geologically, these islands are not static structures but dynamic, constantly moving landforms. Ocean City's beachfront is only maintained in its current location through extensive and very expensive beach nourishment projects where sand is pumped back onto the beach from offshore deposits. Without this human intervention, the island would naturally migrate westward toward the mainland, a process known as coastal recession, constantly reshaped by powerful coastal storms and the relentless forces of oceanic currents. 42. Maryland is geographically split by the fall line. Running diagonally through Maryland, roughly following the path of I-95, is a significant geological boundary known as the Atlantic Seaboard Fall Line, or Fall Zone. This line marks the transition point between the hard, ancient crystalline rocks of the inland Piedmont Plateau and the softer, younger sediments of the Atlantic coastal plain. Along this line, rivers that flow eastward suddenly descend rapidly, creating waterfalls and rapids, the falls that give the line its name. This geographic feature historically dictated where early colonial settlements and major cities like Baltimore were established, as it represented the highest navigable point for ships and a source of water power for mills. 41. The Backbone Mountain Ridge is shared with West Virginia. Hoy Crest, Maryland's highest point at 3,360 feet above sea level, is not a freestanding peak, but is actually a point along the larger Backbone Mountain Ridge. This ridge acts as a natural boundary between Maryland and West Virginia, and the summit of Backbone Mountain itself technically straddles the state line, though the highest point is confirmed to be on the Maryland side in Garrett County. This geographic arrangement means that any hike to the state high point involves traversing a significant stretch of a mountain shared with another state, physically embodying Maryland's connection to the larger Appalachian mountain chain. 40. The eastern shore is part of the Delmarva Peninsula. The entire portion of Maryland east of the Chesapeake Bay is known as the Eastern Shore, and it is a geographically distinct area because it occupies the northern part of the much larger Delmarva Peninsula. This name is an ingenious mashup of the three states that share the peninsula: Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. Geologically, the Delmarva is a low-lying, flat expanse that is part of the Atlantic coastal plain, characterized by poor drainage, extensive marshland, and a high susceptibility to rising sea levels, making it a unique and vulnerable geographical region on the East Coast. 39. The geometric center is located in Prince George's County, the official geographic center of Maryland. The point where the state would theoretically balance if laid flat is located in Prince George's County, specifically about 4.5 miles northwest of the small community of Davidsonville. This spot is calculated using a method that takes into account the state's irregular water-laced boundaries, and it places the true center of the state, surprisingly, outside of the densely populated Baltimore-Washington corridor. This point represents a fascinating, non-obvious geographical marker within a state that is often defined by its major metropolitan areas. 38. The Catoctin Mountains are an outlier of the Blue Ridge. In Frederick County, the Catoctin Mountains rise prominently and are not just a simple range. They are geologically a western ridge of the larger, significant Blue Ridge Mountains. This range is composed of extremely old, durable rock that resisted the erosion that flattened the surrounding land, making it stand out as a distinct wooded barrier. This particular mountain geography creates unique microclimates and ecosystems, which support dense hardwood forests and numerous state and national parklands, including Catoctin Mountain Park, which is known for its rugged hiking trails and scenic overlooks. 37. The Chesapeake and Delaware Canal creates an artificial border. On the far northeastern corner of Maryland, the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal slices through the Delmarva Peninsula, connecting the Chesapeake Bay to the Delaware River. While entirely man-made, this crucial shipping lane, which is 14 miles long, functions as a significant geographical boundary, separating a small portion of Cecil County, Maryland, from the rest of the peninsula. This canal saves hundreds of miles for ships traveling between Baltimore and Philadelphia, demonstrating how massive civil engineering projects can literally literally redraw the practical geography and trade routes of a region. 36. Western Maryland has a distinct subarctic swamp. In the Appalachian Plateau of Garrett County, you can find a truly unique ecosystem called Cranesville Swamp. This area is geographically fascinating because it is a bog whose climate and flora resemble regions much farther north in Canada, a feature known as a relic boreal ecosystem. The high elevation and the bowl-like valley it sits in create a cold air sink where temperatures remain lower, allowing plant species like sphagnum moss, tamarack trees, and various orchids, which are typical of boreal forests, to thrive far south of their usual range, a geographical anomaly created by unique topography and localized climate conditions. 35. The Patapsco River defines the port of Baltimore. The economic and geographic importance of Baltimore, Maryland's largest city and major port, is inextricably linked to the Patapsco River, a short but powerful river that empties into the Chesapeake Bay. Specifically, the Patapsco's estuary, a drowned river valley where fresh and salt water mix, forms the deep and sheltered Baltimore Harbor. This protected location, coupled with the deep channel carved by the river, is what made the port a natural hub for shipping and trade from the earliest colonial days to its current status as a major international cargo terminal. 34. Assateague Island is home to feral horses and shifting dunes. A portion of the famous Assateague Island, which is known for its population of wild feral horses, belongs to Maryland on its eastern shore. Geographically, this is a classic barrier island and spit system characterized by vast sandy beaches, dynamic dune systems, and brackish marshes. The dunes themselves are incredibly important geographical features, acting as the island's first line of defense against powerful ocean storms, and their appearance and location are constantly altered by wind and wave action, making Assateague a perpetually changing piece of the state's geography. 33. The Mason-Dixon line has no geographic basis in the state's west. While the Mason-Dixon line serves as the northern boundary between Maryland and Pennsylvania for much of its length, this famous border demarcation loses its simple, straight-line geographical rule in the westernmost regions. As it approaches the Panhandle, the surveyors had to contend with the complex Appalachian topography, forcing adjustments and sometimes requiring the line to be measured over rugged, difficult terrain. This contrasts sharply with the line's original, purely geometric intention, showing how challenging mountainous geography forced a deviation from a clean, abstract mathematical boundary. 32. Maryland's western panhandle is a geographical squeeze. The extreme western part of Maryland is often called the Panhandle, a narrow extension of the state that juts westward, geographically constrained by Pennsylvania to the north and West Virginia to the south. This shape is not arbitrary. It is the result of historical colonial land grants and border disputes which left Maryland with a sliver of mountainous land that includes the state's highest elevations. This unique geography means that the western counties of Allegheny and Garrett have a distinct culture and climate, more closely resembling Appalachia than the Chesapeake Bay area. 31. Many rivers are actually tidal estuaries in the lowlands. When traveling through the coastal plain regions of Maryland, it's easy to look at a map and identify rivers like the Patuxent, the Choptank, or the Nanticoke. However, for a significant part of their length, especially near the bay, these rivers are actually broad, tidal estuaries. This means the water level rises and falls with the oceanic tide, and the water is a mix of fresh and salt, brackish water. Geographically, this creates vast tidal marshes and wetlands, which are among the most ecologically productive and significant habitats in the state, essentially blurring the line between river and bay. 30. The Ridge and Valley Province exhibits distinctive topography. As you travel west of the Blue Ridge, you enter the Ridge and Valley Province, a geographic region characterized by long, parallel mountain ridges and deep, fertile valleys. This unique topography is the result of immense geological forces that folded and faulted the Earth's crust millions of years ago, creating alternating bands of resistant and non-resistant rock. In Maryland, this province gives rise to beautiful natural features like Green Ridge State Forest, where the roads often run either directly on the crests of the ridges or along the flat valley floors, creating a distinctive landscape that's completely different from the coastal flatlands. 29. Maryland's soil types vary dramatically across the fall line. The two main physiographic provinces of Maryland, the coastal plain and the Piedmont, are separated by the fall line, and this geological divide results in a profound and immediate change in soil composition and fertility. East of the fall line, the soils are predominantly sandy and silty, derived from soft, younger marine sediments. nutrients, making them less fertile and well-drained. West of the line in the Piedmont, the soils are rich, clay-heavy, and derived from the weathering of ancient crystalline rock, which explains why agriculture has historically flourished in the central part of the state, an important geographical distinction that shaped early settlement patterns. 28. The Chesapeake Bay is technically not a bay. Here's a fun geographical technicality. The massive, sprawling body of water that defines Maryland is known worldwide as the Chesapeake Bay, but geologically it is defined as a drowned river valley or estuary. During the last ice age, the ocean levels were much lower, and the Susquehanna River carved a deep valley all the way out to the continental shelf. When the glaciers melted and sea levels rose, this valley was flooded with seawater. This geological origin is why the bay is so shallow on average, yet contains deep trenches like the aforementioned Bloody Point Hole, which are remnants of the original river channels. 27. The Appalachian Trail runs through the state for over 40 miles. The famed Appalachian National Scenic Trail, AT, passes directly through the state of Maryland for approximately 41 miles, running along the mountainous spine of the state from Harper's Ferry to Penn Mar. Geographically, this section of the trail is notable because it follows the crests of the Blue Ridge Mountains and often runs directly along the Maryland-West Virginia border. Hikers crossing Maryland experience rugged terrain and significant elevation changes, traversing some of the most scenic overlooks in the region, including views of the Potomac River and the Great Valley, firmly connecting the state to the continental scale geography of the Appalachian Mountains. 26. The extreme eastern part of the state is susceptible to coastal flooding. Because the eastern shore is an extremely low-lying extension of the Atlantic coastal plain, large portions of this region are less than 15 feet above sea level. This low elevation makes it geographically vulnerable to storm surges during hurricanes and nor'easters, and also highly susceptible to the long-term effects of sea level rise. Extensive wetlands, farms, and even small communities are continually being threatened by inundation, highlighting a critical geographical challenge where the land-water boundary is perpetually under pressure from oceanic forces. 25. Three distinct mountain ranges cross the state. Maryland is traversed by three major mountain ranges, all part of the larger Appalachian system, demonstrating the state's significant mountainous geography in the west. These are the Blue Ridge Mountains, the easternmost, the Ridge and Valley ranges, which include smaller ridges like the Allegheny Front, and the Appalachian Plateau in the extreme west. Each range has a different geological structure and age, contributing to the America in Miniature title by offering three unique mountain environments within a relatively small area. 24. The smallest county, Calvert, is a geologically defined peninsula. Calvert County, located on the western side of the Chesapeake Bay, holds the title for Maryland's smallest county by area, excluding the independent city of Baltimore. Geographically, it is almost entirely a long, narrow peninsula bounded by the Patuxent River to the west and the Chesapeake Bay to the east. This unique peninsular geography means that no point in Calvert County is very far from the water, which has historically influenced its economy, culture, and population distribution, focusing much of the area's activity along the shorelines. 23. The state's highest waterfall is located in the mountains. While Maryland isn't famous for massive waterfalls like some western states, the highest waterfall by total height within the state is Muddy Creek Falls, located in Swallow Falls State Park in Garrett County. This waterfall plunges approximately 53 feet over a rugged cliff face in a truly wild and forested setting. The falls are a geological feature created by the erosion of the water over different layers of bedrock, with the more resistant layers forming the lip of the falls and the softer layers underneath being carved out over millennia. 22. The Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel is a geographically significant link. While most people think of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge as the iconic structure, the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, often associated with Virginia, has its geological connection to Maryland's geography. The bay itself, which necessitates such a massive crossing, is Maryland's dominant geographical feature. The colossal nature of the bridge system, which includes the tunnels, underscores the geographic scale of the bay's mouth, and it serves as a critical man-made link overcoming the natural separation of the Delmarva Peninsula from the mainland, drastically changing the economic geography of the entire region. 21. The westernmost point is further west than most of Ohio. Due to the extreme westward jut of the Maryland Panhandle, the westernmost point of Garrett County is geographically farther west than a large portion of the state of Ohio, including major cities like Cleveland. This fact powerfully illustrates the odd, narrow, and elongated shape of Maryland's boundary, pushing its geography far into the western part of the Eastern Time Zone and placing its mountain climbing climate well away from the coastal influences that define the rest of the state. 20. The North Branch of the Potomac River is the true source of the border. The boundary between Maryland and West Virginia is complex, especially in the west, but it ultimately hinges on the North Branch of the Potomac River. The border follows this particular branch, as opposed to the South Branch, which was a point of geographical and legal contention early in the state's history. This river segment's position and flow were ultimately the defining geographic features that determined the extent of the panhandle and the location of the border, demonstrating the profound importance of hydrology in political geography. 19. The Piedmont Plateau is characterized by rolling hills and monadnocks. The Piedmont Plateau region of Maryland, which extends roughly from the fall line westward to the Blue Ridge Mountains, is not flat but is characterized by gentle rolling hills that are often punctuated by isolated resistant peaks known as monadnocks. These monadnocks, like Sugarloaf Mountain in Montgomery County, are remnants of harder rock that have resisted the long-term erosion that wore down the surrounding landscape. They stand as striking geographical features, providing panoramic views and serving as unique ecological islands within the gentler topography of the plateau. 18. Maryland has extensive salt marshes and tidal flats. The vast majority of Maryland's extensive tidal shoreline is not composed of sandy beaches, but rather of salt marshes and tidal flats, especially along the eastern shore and the lower western shore. These areas, which are geographically defined by their regular inundation by brackish water, are crucial features where land and water constantly interact. They are the result of low-energy coastlines and the fine sediments carried by rivers into the Chesapeake Bay, creating one of the most productive and protective coastal environments in the entire mid-Atlantic region. 17. The state's highest incorporated city is Frostburg. Frostburg, located in Allegheny County, claims the title of the highest incorporated city in Maryland, with a downtown elevation of about 2,200 feet above sea level. This high elevation is a direct consequence of its geographic location within the Appalachian Plateau, placing it on a significant highland compared to the rest of the state. The town's elevated position dramatically impacts its climate, resulting in notably colder winters and more frequent, heavier snowfalls than areas just 50 miles east, a true mountain geography effect. 16. The coastal plain is underlain by unconsolidated sediment. Geologically, the entire Atlantic coastal plain, which includes all of the eastern shore and southern Maryland, is composed of relatively young, unconsolidated sediments. This means the land here is built upon layers of sand, clay, and gravel that have not been compressed and hardened into solid rock, unlike the ancient hard bedrock of the Piedmont. This soft, porous geology influences everything from the type of soil available for farming to the capacity of the land to hold groundwater, a key characteristic of the Mid-Atlantic's coastal geography. 15. The bay's main stem acts as a massive geographic barrier. The Chesapeake Bay is more than just a large body of water. It is a formidable geographical barrier that historically and currently dictates infrastructure and travel within the state. The main stem of the bay, which is up to 35 miles wide in places, creates a natural division between the eastern shore and the western shore. This separation necessitated major engineering feats like the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, and it maintains a regional identity and economic geography that is distinct on either side of the massive aquatic obstacle. 14. The state's easternmost point is part of Assateague Island. The very eastern tip of Maryland's territory is found on Assateague Island in Worcester County. Geographically, this location is important because it is perpetually exposed to the full, unmitigated forces of the Atlantic Ocean. Unlike the sheltered shores of the bay, this point is defined by high-energy waves, longshore drift, and constantly shifting sand, marking the definitive boundary where the landmass of Maryland yields completely to the open sea and the continental shelf beyond. 13. Maryland contains karst topography in its western valleys. In parts of the Ridge and Valley province, particularly near Hagerstown, the underlying limestone bedrock creates a unique geographical phenomenon known as karst topography. This is a landscape characterized by sinkholes, caves, and underground drainage systems created by the dissolution of the soluble limestone by mildly acidic rainwater. These underground features can lead to sudden collapses and influence local hydrology, creating a striking and sometimes unpredictable geographic structure beneath the surface. 12. The Potomac River is a prime example of an engraved meander. Near the borders of Montgomery and Frederick counties, the Potomac River exhibits features known as engraved or entrenched meanders. These are winding river curves, meanders that have been carved deep into the bedrock, suggesting that the river existed and was meandering on a flat plain before the surrounding land was uplifted. As the land slowly rose over geological time, the river maintained its course, cutting downwards through the bedrock bedrock to create deep gorges, a stunning geographical illustration of the interplay between river erosion and tectonic uplift. 11. The state's maximum elevation gain is highly compressed. Maryland boasts one of the most compressed elevation changes of any state on the East Coast. You can travel from sea level at Ocean City to the state's highest point, Hoy Crest, 3,360 feet, in a horizontal distance of less than 200 miles. This dramatic rise, achieved by crossing the coastal plain, the Piedmont, and 3 major mountain ranges in such a short distance, is the core geographical reason behind the state's America in Miniature title, showcasing an intense concentration of diverse topography. Before we get to the 10 facts that corroborate what I told you at the beginning, remember to subscribe to the channel and give it a like to become experts in American geography. 10. The Youghiogheny River flows northward to the Ohio River system. In the state's far western reaches of Garrett County, the Youghiogheny River, affectionately known as the Yuh, presents a fascinating geographical anomaly. It is one of the few rivers in Maryland that does not flow toward the Chesapeake Bay. Instead, the Yuh flows northward and then westward, ultimately draining into the Monongahela River, which joins the Allegheny River to form the Ohio River, and eventually the Mississippi River. This makes the Youghiogheny River Basin the only part of Maryland that is geographically part of the vast Mississippi River watershed, an important continental divide marker. 9. Maryland's climate is highly dependent on its proximity to the bay. The immense surface area of the Chesapeake Bay acts as a massive geographical climate moderator for much of the state, particularly the eastern shore and central Maryland. The large body of water absorbs heat in the summer and releases it slowly in the winter, leading to milder temperatures near the bay compared to areas inland or in the mountains. This geographical influence means that the growing seasons are longer, and coastal areas rarely experience the extreme cold found in the high elevations of western Maryland. 8. The Mason-Dixon line is defined by astronomical surveying. The famous Mason-Dixon line that forms the northern boundary of Maryland is not based on any natural geographical feature like a river or mountain range. It is a purely geometric and mathematically derived line. It was surveyed in the 1760s using exacting astronomical and mathematical calculations to run precisely along the latitude of 39 degrees, 43 minutes, 20 seconds north. This makes it a unique geographic marker, representing one of the earliest and most precise applications of scientific surveying to establish political boundaries in North America. 7. The Eastern Continental Divide passes through the Western Panhandle. The Eastern Continental Divide, the hydrological line that separates water flowing east to the Atlantic Ocean from water flowing west to the Gulf of Mexico via the Mississippi River, runs directly through Maryland's Western Panhandle. Specifically, it crosses parts of Garrett County. This geographical feature means that a drop of rain falling on the west side of this divide will eventually end up in the Gulf of Mexico, while a drop on the east side will flow into the Chesapeake Bay and then the Atlantic, a powerful testament to the state's position at a major continental water-shedding boundary. 6. The Susquehanna River Delta is the bay's geological engine. The Susquehanna River, which is the longest river on the East Coast and the largest single source of fresh water, empties into the Chesapeake Bay at its northern end in Maryland. Geographically, this confluence is crucial because the Susquehanna is the primary engine that created the bay's drowned river valley and continues to supply the vast majority of its fresh water and sediment. The enormous delta it formed at its mouth is where the bay begins, making it the most important geographical feature shaping the bay's hydrology, salinity, and sediment load. 5. The Chesapeake Bay is one of the world's largest estuaries. On a global scale, the Chesapeake Bay is geographically significant as one of the world's largest and most biologically productive estuaries. An estuary is defined as a partially enclosed coastal body of brackish water with one or more rivers flowing into it and a free connection to the open sea. Its massive scale, with a surface area of over 4,400 square miles, makes it a unique global geographical phenomenon, demonstrating an immense, complex intersection of fresh and saltwater systems found on few other continents. 4. The Annapolis Rocks and Black Rock are quartzite cliffs. The striking cliffs known as Annapolis Rocks and Black Rock, which offer spectacular views of the Great Valley and are popular with hikers, are geological features composed of incredibly durable and erosion-resistant rock called quartzite. Geographically, these cliffs are the result of the extreme folding and uplift of the Appalachian Mountains, where the hardest layers of rock were tilted and exposed. Their resistance to weathering causes them to stand prominently, defining the mountain ridge lines in this part of Washington County. 3. Maryland has a small, volcanically formed geological outcrop in a state not known for volcanic activity. Maryland contains a very small, geologically unique region in the Piedmont that shows evidence of ancient volcanic or igneous activity. This includes rocky outcrops formed from extremely old, hard, dark-colored rocks like gabbro or diabase, which were once molten magma intruded into the Earth's crust. These formations are geographically distinct because they weather differently from the surrounding rock, often leading to poor rocky soils and unique mineral deposits, offering a rare glimpse into the state's deep, fiery geological past. 2. The eastern shore is slowly sinking due to glacial rebound. Here's a major, slow-motion geographical change. The eastern shore and the coastal plain are slowly subsiding due to a process known as forebulge collapse, a delayed effect of the last ice age. During the glacial period, the massive weight of ice pushed down the land far to the north, causing the land in the mid-Atlantic, the forebulge, to rise. Now that the ice is gone, the northern land is rebounding, and the Maryland forebulge is slowly collapsing. This geographical sinking, combined with rising sea levels, dramatically exacerbates the coastal flooding problems mentioned earlier. 1. The smallest border is shared with the state of Delaware. Maryland shares a tiny geographical boundary with the state of Delaware, which is surprisingly the shortest land border it shares with any of its neighbors. This small, straight-line segment, which is less than 30 miles long, is located on the Delmarva Peninsula, connecting the Mason-Dixon line to the circular boundary of Delaware. It is a highly significant geographical point because it represents the only land-based, non-river-defined boundary between Maryland and its eastern neighbor, contrasting sharply with the long, winding river boundaries it shares with Virginia and West Virginia. We started out thinking of Maryland as just the Chesapeake Bay and maybe a little stretch of the Atlantic, but what we've really explored is a state that acts as a microcosm of the entire eastern seaboard, from the dramatic glacier-influenced forebulge collapse slowly sinking the eastern shore, to the fact that rain falling in the far west is headed for the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico. That's a continental scale story playing out in a space you can cross in a few hours. Now that you know these 50 facts about Maryland, tell us, which one did you like the most, or which one surprised you the most? We'd love to read your opinion in the comments and see how many of us picked the same number. And something else many of us will probably agree on is watching the video I'm leaving on screen, because we all love sharing and learning interesting facts. And that's exactly what this video is all about. But before you watch it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give it a like. Otherwise, we might not see each other again.